Here comes Rob.
Hi, Rob.
Hi.
Hi, John. The Civic Association is here, and the video and audio are live.
Okay, great. Well, welcome everybody to our November meeting. And we are going to work through our agenda. I don't know, maybe we'll have a shorter meeting tonight. I don't know. But we definitely have the council coming up at 7:30. So Sean, should we jump to the items for discussion?
Sure.
And then maybe we can weave in, comments as you have them. Okay. Let's see if I can move. I'm working on two screens, so I'm looking at.
Yeah, I could jump in, right, and talk about the public health complaints, if that's okay.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Um, you know, I guess what we're talking about here are accumulations of trash, rubbish, and the animals that that kind of situation attracts. Clearly, if that's something that's happening on your own property and you are the source of that, the best thing to do is to call an exterminator, and they have ways to manage that. To either to take care of the issue, but the underlying cause is this usually the storage of trash and edible disposed foodstuffs, which is not to say that you all shouldn't be composting your food scraps. There's an effective way to do that and not attract vermin. Secondarily, if you're having problems and you know it's on your neighbor's property, the first thing to do is to make that neighbor aware. If there isn't a resolution of that problem, the borough does have authority under its property maintenance code to inspect properties and issue citations. We don't go directly to the citation route. We usually issue warnings and notices of violation, and we give the respondent a certain amount of time to remediate the problem without having to get the court involved, because that's costs of our solicitor, the code enforcement officer, and it takes time to do that. But we start usually with an inspection, and then it goes to notice of violation. Most things are resolved at that stage. It's very few cases that we end up going to the district justice on, but if we have to, we will. In addition, there is a county health code that applies to all Montgomery County. And if you go to our website, you can also, residents can also lodge complaints there, having to do with conditions of property and whether there's rodents being harbored there or other kinds of animals taking advantage of situations on the way, having to do with the way a property is maintained. That follows pretty much the same process. There is an environmental specialist at the county who works in Lower Merion, responds to Lower Merion and claims and investigates issues in Lower Merion and Narberth. And that person would come out and inspect. And the county health code is quite similar to our local property maintenance code. So they'd be doing basically this, the same process, but residents can go either direction if they're encountering any issues. And there is instructions to do that on our website, and we're happy to help out if there is a problem.
Okay, thank you, Sean. So as a first step, just as a reminder to all of us and our neighbors, it would be trying to contain the problem on our, if it's on our own property. But if the problem is at another property, then how would a neighbor initiate that complaint? They would go to our website
Yeah, and I would encourage neighbors to talk directly to the neighbors. Maybe the problem can be resolved quickly. Maybe the other neighbor's not aware of it. That's always the first route. But if that doesn't prove successful, there is a work order that can be submitted to the borough. It gets routed to the code enforcement officer who investigates and responds and includes the complainant in the response so that there's a way to close that loop.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sean. Bob, did you want to speak to this because you've seen this?
No, I mean, I looked. I think Sean covered all the bases. One thought comes to mind that might help council members and the public, but you know, Sean covered all the bases because, like, when I learned is that basically what we do and what Sean just outlined is basically the way municipalities all over the country address the problem of rodents, and it's a really big problem, especially in you know, urban congested areas. But it's like, I think what's challenging for us sometimes is when we get complaints of this kind or others kinds of complaints, is that there's a kind of coherent response. And you know, sometimes what happens, I think, is neighbors talk to a council member and the council member thinks they sort of know part of an answer, and then you know, they talk to someone on the staff and they get part of the answer. And so it's helpful, I think, Sean, that you know, that you have a kind of coherent plan, and it's on the website so people can just kind of like see it all outlined in one place, so council members can stay on the same page with the professional staff. So I just wondered if the little outline of what you just described, Sean, could be incorporated into some kind of a, you know, memorialized somewhere so that when this comes up again, we don't have to talk about it over and over again. It's just someplace that we can reference. And I think you said there's something on the website, but what can you say again what that is?
Yeah, there's instructions on how to file a work order, and then there's some specifics with regards to what one can do if there is an issue that, you know, a health related issue. You do have the contact for the, excuse me, the county's Board of Health on that website. And we can revisit that text also to address this specific issue, but it's under the, if you go to our homepage and you click on the report and issue icon, it looks like a wrench, takes you right there. And
that looks good. I'm wondering if we could have all in one place, like maybe a few links for property owners who maybe just don't know how to Google this, you know, like you can Google it and find out a lot of solutions for how to control rats on your own property, including there's professionals who you can hire to do that for you. And also so there's like a lot of educational stuff out there that's available for people. It sounds to me like, as you're happy, Sean, with our legal code, like that there's enough ordinances in place that you can do your job and the staff can do their job around this issue.
yeah.
Is that right? You're not lacking for any tools.
No, it's very broad actually. So it's open to interpretation, and we still have to collect evidence, you know, that there is an issue should it have to go to the courts.
So
I don't have anything more, Rob. Thank you so much, Sean.
Yeah, thank you both. I just want to suggest that maybe, Sean, if you're amenable, maybe I could work with you and the mayor, whoever would like to be a part of it, on just like a paragraph on kind of rodent control that we could put into the weekly email. I'd be happy to work with you on that, but I just think getting the information out there so that everyone knows, you know, narberthpa.gov, you can click on the wrench, report an issue, and begin the process. And maybe as part of that, we could also mention, Matt, I think what you negotiated with the trash contract, you know, the option for people to buy new trash cans. I think, you know, in the interest of putting tight lids on our trash, I'd be happy to work on that. And it may just answer a lot of questions because we seem to be getting quite a bit of complaints about rats on the south side, on the north side.
And Rob, if you just want to send it past me, I'm happy to look at it and add ideas too. We've been very successful on our own property in changing the, what was a pretty bad problem to almost like zero problem.
It's also important from a management perspective that if there are complaints that they get reported to the borough so that we can document it and so that we can detect patterns. If it's something that's just coming and it dies in a cul-de-sac of a council person's inbox and gets handled that way, then we don't know what's going on, where it's going on, and that can be helpful for us to diagnose issues.
Okay, good. So all right. So I'll work on that with the committee. I can just circulate that. Okay, thank you. So let's see. The next item we have is the operating budget. If you remember, it seems like so long ago, but we had a visit from Narberth Ambulance to request a yearly allocation. And so we do have a number that's kind of a placeholder at the moment. I think it's 5,000 in the operating budget that we're considering as a council. So that's one question I wanted to revisit as a group. Is that something that we can support and recommend to our council colleagues?
How did we come up with that number? Is that because it sounds like that's the historical number or something the borough's been giving money to the Narberth Ambulance for as long as I can remember. And there might have been one year where we didn't, but I'm not.
There wasn't an allocation in 19 or 20. So the last year we did it was in 18, and that was in the amount of $4,000. And I can't remember, but after we last spoke with the representatives from Narberth Ambulance, I followed up with them by email and asked for some additional information, which they sent it to me, and it complied with our requests. I don't recall if I forwarded that to everybody on council, but I can do that. The $5,000 is part of their, it's an operating revenue item that they transfer to their capital program. So it's dollars that, together with the contribution from the township, replaces equipment that they need to keep operations going. So it's a revolving fund from which they draw on to purchase major capital items like ambulances.
Mona?
And this would be in the 2021 budget that we're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're talking about going back to the 4,000.
No, they requested 5,000.
They requested 5,000, sorry. Okay. And it's possible we might have a shortfall next year of maybe right about that same amount?
No, we're actually projected to be surplus of about a little under $5,000 right now. But there, not a lot can happen between now and the end of the year, but things could happen between now and the end of the year that could affect that.
I'm in favor of that particular number, Rob, of recommending that number, since that's the recommendation we have from staff, and it's a little more than we gave the last time we gave. It's 20% more than what we gave, or it's 25% more than what we gave last time.
Okay.
No, it's not. It's 20% more. Is that right? It's 20,000. It's $1,000 more than $4,000. So it's 20% more.
Sean, if you wouldn't mind, maybe you did already, but if you wouldn't mind sharing whatever they sent over to you.
Yeah, it was a budget, and they actually sent the tax return, but didn't really need that. But it was a budget and a sort of narrative that explained what the request was. I apologize if I haven't sorted that around, but I thought I'll do that.
You probably did, Sean, and I just had missing it. Okay.
I think it's important to say too that many of our residents give, donations privately to the ambulance service as well, and always have. And and just as they do, residents also give privately to the library, they give privately to the fire department,
Hmm.
as well as being supported by the borough.
Okay, it seems like we would be comfortable recommending that, I can report that back to later tonight, that we would support that. Okay.
I think, yeah, if we can fit it in our budget, I think it's a very important part of our budget, public safety.
It
Mhm.
is in the preliminary budget that I circulated earlier, that 5,000 allocation.
Mhm.
Thank you.
But I think it's worth it to validate that tonight with council.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay. S- all right, so that's that. Now, while we're on the budget, we should also just kind of be aware that we have a couple other line items that pertain to our committee. And so either at this meeting or potentially our next meeting, Sean, is there still time for this committee to kind of weigh in again in early December?
Yes.
Okay. So maybe we could just put it on our radar if, as a committee, we could review the operating budget Sean has shared with us to offer feedback if we have any as a committee. So the Narberth ambulance is one line item. There's also a line item for climate action in there. And then, of course, there's the police budget, so there's several line items. So maybe we can just take that as an assignment for all of us and work on it. I'm just aware, like in reflecting on our council process, I have found it useful for committees, the 3 committees, to vet the operating. So,
Yeah, I think tonight on our agenda tonight we'll be voting to we'll be discussing the budget, and then we'll have the opportunity to vote on advertising this budget. And especially we have to do that with enough time before we get to December. So I'm not sure if our time for reviewing, I think if we're going to look at those items, we should look at them right now.
okay.
Otherwise, we're not going to have time to review those before we're actually voting on the advertising.
We also, for process sake, you could, you could talk about it now, but also review it in December. And then there's an opportunity then at the December business meeting, if you have recommended changes, to make it then. That's how
We're allowed to change it after.
Yeah, you're allowed to change it, but you don't have to have like a static budget in place for 30 days and then vote on it. You just have to advertise some budget 30 days prior to adoption of the budget. And because of the way the calendar works this year, we have to do the advertising at our workshop meeting in November. We can't wait to the business meeting to do that. Or we would miss the 30 days to adopt it at the December business meeting.
So Rob, in that case, like I accept your assignment to go and, to look at our the line items that pertain to this committee in particular.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Yeah. Just to give it, some attention in our committee. I think that's helpful. Okay. So the next item we have, and then we'll have some time for other things too, but the next item is the mask ordinance. And we had discussed at our last council meeting, there was interest in possibly passing an amendment. And so John Walco has prepared some language for us, which I think I circulated. And what we want to do now is see if we're comfortable with that language or if we would recommend tweaking it in some way. So I'm going to bring up my version. Does everyone have a copy, or would it help?
Did. I think you sent them around, didn't you?
Yeah, I think I did.
We looked at it already. Yeah. 4:06 on Tuesday.
Okay. So what John did is he made some additions to I guess it's I think it's 1.3b in the original.
Rob, I thought you were preparing to share your screen, so I transferred hosting to you.
Oh, okay.
You can, if you want to.
Yeah, okay.
I'm looking at it. I'd love to hear what Mona thinks, because this is, she and I shared this concern that we were attempting to sort of over-regulate the mask wearing in places where it was maybe natural for people to not be required to be masked because they were either socially distanced or all by themselves, just enjoying some solitary time in the park, sitting on a bench. Why bother people who aren't bothering anybody else?
Mm-hmm. Can you see that now on the screen?
Yep.
And it seems like in the playground, there's certainly more space for people to stay socially distanced, to choose to be socially distanced. It's different than the conditions of the 5A district or the retail district where, there's no other option other than to walk down the sidewalk. And at any moment, somebody can be going in or out of a store, and shopping is somewhat of a necessity, and it's important to our businesses that people who go into the businesses are wearing masks for their safety.
I like the amendments that John has proposed. He also mentioned that it expanded so on the one hand, it has an exception if you can maintain 6 feet of distance, which I think is important. I think, health measures like this should have a compelling governmental justification, and the ordinance should be narrowly tailored to that health justification. So I think the 6 feet is important, and that might change. Recommendations might be changing, but I think that's important. And he did say that it was expanded to the adjacent sidewalks around the park, which I actually agree with. I think that's important because, similar to the business district, you cannot maintain 6 feet of distance on the sidewalks because of the fence. So if someone's passing you on the sidewalk without a mask, there's a fence there. The only way you could avoid them is by going into the street, where cars go pretty fast down that street sometimes on Windsor. So I like it. I'm comfortable with I think it gives more flexibility for people who have space in the park, and it also gives more, it just reminds people that it's not okay to force someone else to walk into the street because you don't feel like wearing a mask. So.
Okay. So, Mayor?
So the one issue I have, Cindy raised at the last meeting, raised the point that you don't want to have the police have to have measuring sticks to see if someone's 4.5 feet apart or 6 feet apart. And 6 feet is kind of the general guideline for how much you want to stay apart. But for enforcement purposes, if you want to give a little leeway there, say 10 feet, just so that you can tell if someone's 10 feet apart, it's a bigger space versus a 4.5 versus 6. I mean, it's you want to make it slightly larger just to make it super clear that they're not being infected or infecting others. That was my only concern. You have it right at the edge.
Yeah, okay, so that would mean...
Often you'll see kids, when I say kids, put your mask on, they're like, we're 6 feet apart. And the truth is they're about 1.5 feet apart.
I agree with that. And I think Cindy's analogy was something like speed limits. Like if you set the speed limit at 15, you could tell if someone's going faster. It's really hard to tell sometimes when you're standing next to the road if a car's going 25 or 35. 25 feels pretty darn fast, right? But 15 is 10 to 15, you feel it. I would agree with you. You want to be able to feel the difference. And 6 feet, 3 feet is different than 10 feet, right? I like that amendment.
Okay, so Mona, what do you think of that? Changing 6 to 10 feet.
I'm comfortable with it. If the mayor thinks that's a good idea, I'm comfortable with it.
Okay, and let's see. I mean, it would be specific to this provision is specific to the parks. So, you know,
Right, because we don't have the 6-foot provision for the 5A. That's just, if you're in that district, you're required to wear a mask.
right. Okay.
My understanding is John said he changed that. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that's how I'm reading the ordinance.
Hmm?
The
That's,
changes.
we better look at it again
Okay,
closely.
let me look.
I mean, we could talk to our solicitor about that tonight at the meeting, and
But
Oh,
you think he changed it? You think he changed it to allow social distancing in the 5A?
no, I think the same thing covers if you look in his email, the same thing covers the whole.
Yeah, what he said
I don't think so. I read.
What he said was something in the email. He said, John said, I left the specific distance in 6 feet instead of phrasing it as the defined term in contact, in case the number is desired to be increased. So and then further down he says, yeah, I think he's just putting the 6 feet in here, but we can check.
I think we should ask that question specifically to John tonight and let him know how we feel about those, because yeah, we want to make sure if that's what we're saying.
Okay. All right, so we'll check with John on that. And
Yeah, it is what he means, because under I don't think we need to check with him. If you read D, it uses the word in contact while working at a business or in any jobs within the borough when such worker employee, oh, that's in the borough.
Right. I think we
Okay.
need to check.
Upon any public, okay, here it is. It's part C. Upon any public street or sidewalk located within the 5A district or 5B, it doesn't have anything to, it doesn't say anything about in contact there. In contact's only used in clause A and D. Yeah, it's only used in A and D. Inside a business, while working in a business. Yeah. We can check with him, but that's I don't know, that's the way I read it. It's the in contact clause is where the 10 feet or the 6 feet is established.
yeah, that's right. If I can share, maybe this will clear it up. If I share the ordinance as passed, I'll try to share this. I think this is it. Can you see this here?
Yep.
Okay, so what we're talking about is, this is section 1, part 3. And what John has proposed is an addition, I guess, to B, right? But when you read C, upon any public street or sidewalk, this would stay intact.
Yeah, and there's no in contact clause there. It's the in contact is only in part A and part D.
That's right.
Okay.
So does that clarify it, your question, Mona?
I think it does. Yeah.
Okay, so then you're comfortable with the proposal, the amendment that we're talking about?
Yes, that the 10 feet exception is within parks and playgrounds.
Okay.
Also the other one, the other place. Well, I guess it's, never mind.
Okay, so we can We can recommend that then, the 10 feet, and we can confirm again with John Walco, but I think we're reading it correctly. So, all right. Well, thank you, Mona, for suggesting this, and Andrea for the 10 feet. Okay, so I think we've got that piece. It's 7 o'clock. We have a few other kind of dangling concerns that maybe I'll just mention, okay, and then we could see Sean or the chief if you wanted to say anything by way of updates. But I think one thing that I've been hearing from neighbors is some concern around the smoke shop that's coming into town. And
It's open now.
is it okay?
Yeah.
So it's just a question, that I have, I guess for the chief, would a shop like that become part of the daily kind of register that you have been doing with banks and,
The logs.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, normally, well, thanks, Rob, for bringing that up. Actually, believe it or not, this is the first I'm hearing about it.
It's
so
new, yeah.
I'm kind of shocked. What's the location, Rob?
It's, it's where the Venus Nail Shop was.
Okay, so is it that's at the corner of Forest and Haverford?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, it's brand new. So
I mean, don't get me wrong. I did hear some whispers in the wind a while ago that it may be that. This is the first time it's getting confirmed by the committee. Listen, we can set up a log anywhere. That's not really much of an issue. We can certainly do that. It would probably be in our best interest to do that, just to keep some, I would say, some law and order, some structure in there, and just to make sure that they're on the radar. My concern would be with the smoke shop. They have a smoke shop up in Rockledge, which is very similar to our borough, and they have a cooperation agreement, an MOU with Abington. And I know that they have some concerns about people going to that shop and, driving away under the influence. So, there's been marijuana use. I know there's some, Rockledge is very close to my neighborhood. It's about 5 minutes from where I live. And I know there's been some talk about that up there. I'd have to do a deeper dive on that to see how the Rockledge police have responded to that, because we have a similar sized police agency. So I could probably get some information.
Okay. Thank you, John. Yeah, I just, I know you were very proactive in setting up that log. So it occurred to me, you might want to put that on.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. I'm not opposed to that at all. I think success is contagious, and the things that we do are successful in the borough, and that certainly could be one of them added to the list.
Okay, so go ahead, Mona.
May I ask a side question kind of about the logs? Is that, now that the basketball courts are closed, is that part of the log because there are teenagers gathering there all the time? Is that still, I don't know if that's changed since the court's closed, or.
Well, we don't have Mona. We don't have logs at that location. We just basically we do foot patrols at 1 Haverford Avenue. We do foot patrols at 80 Windsor Avenue at the library. We do foot patrols in that area. We have been getting some complaints about kids hanging out there on the basketball court, skateboarding. We did have an incident of criminal mischief involving an abandoned auto that was at that location. That was reported to us within the past week. We are keeping an eye on it. We are doing periodic checks. Most of the times when we go there, we're engaging the kids. We're finding that they're pretty much in compliance. They're just riding their skateboards. But I think what happens is when the cat goes away, the mice will play, and the next thing you know, they start to engage in some unacceptable conduct and some behavior. So I think that's kind of a work in progress, Mona, for us. This is something that's kind of been organic recently that has popped up, I would say, towards the tail end of September. That we have seen. We didn't even see this during the summer. This is something that actually popped up, I would say, right around the end of September, and it's been going on now for about 6 weeks. So we're kind of aware of it, and I'll tell you how we became aware of it. They were actually starting to ride the skateboards right next to the police station and making a whole bunch of racket and doing some jumps off the steps and going up and down the handicap ramp. And the next thing you know, it was like fingernails on a chalkboard. And we had to come out and address them about it, and then they just kind of relocated a little further down the path. But yeah, it is definitely on our radar screen, and we are doing foot patrols in that area, and we are aware of it.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate that. I am, and generally they seem pretty well behaved. I do have a concern about them not wearing masks because teenagers are more likely to be asymptomatic, and they're very close together oftentimes without masks on. But also, I mean, there was one time when I passed and kids were climbing up all the way on the top of the basketball hoops. So of course I yelled at them in my teacher voice because I didn't want them to get hurt. But for the most part, when I've walked by, they seem okay, other than the mask issue.
When it's good to have a teacher voice.
Yeah. With regard to the mask issue, today there was a number of kids on bikes who were the young teenagers, probably 12 to 14 years old, not wearing masks. I always stop them and inform them there's a mask ordinance. We talked about getting some signage in the downtown.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any movement on that?
Yeah, thank you. We're purchasing 10 changeable copy standalone stand-up signs. I was going to call them sandwich board signs, but they're not those A-frame signs. It's actually a sign with a heavier base, and it's two sides on which you can affix 20 by 30 changeable copy. We figured there'd be a lot of uses for that, not just having to do with our mask issue, but we need to do some advertising with the Windsor Avenue bike pop-up bike lane, and we sort of thought through locations where we would want to place these downtown, and we also got a couple extras in case any of them get damaged. So those are ordered, and we're going to be finishing up I won't call it artwork, it'll be a sign, and we actually have some potential we could use some artwork on one of the sides of the sign, but no promises there yet. I have to see if the image file is large enough to use.
Okay. And any time when they may be up?
As soon as they get in.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Okay, so Chief, we wanted to also ask about training options. Mona had emailed me about this earlier, just to check in about de-escalation options, given COVID had canceled so many workshops.
Yes. And I appreciate you bringing that up, Rob. Just to let everybody know, I forwarded around a status of command report probably around 10 minutes after 6 for everybody in their email. So just to give everybody an update on the status of command, I'll jump right into the highlighted areas. There's a couple critical training areas. Number one, our 2020 firearms training has to be concluded with 2 remaining officers, one scheduled for training on November 17th, the other one on November 30th. And the Delaware Valley Trust, which is our work comp provider, as everybody knows, we had the Art of De-escalation training scheduled back in the spring and the summer of 2020. But unfortunately, because of the virus, that was at first postponed, but then eventually canceled altogether for the in-class hands-on session. So now they have retooled that. They have redesigned that to be a virtual session. And we have the officers to be scheduled for that on November 9th, which is Monday, and November the 18th. So we now will have that Art of De-escalation training being scheduled by Delaware Valley Trust, and provided I did reach out to the member of Director Services for DVT. The other thing that's important to note is when we go through annual tactics training with Lower Merion Police Department, and we were on myself and Sean were on a conference call, a Zoom meeting with them earlier today at 11 a.m. Tactics training does in fact cover de-escalation methods that are the latest updates. So we go through that annually with our joint training with the Lower Merion Police Department. The Art of De-escalation training now we're doing with the Delaware Valley Trust. In addition to that, there is also de-escalation training options provided by the Pennsylvania Virtual Training Network and also the Pennsylvania Chiefs of Police Association. So there's different choices that we can make. The one thing about art of de-escalation training is a lot of the narrative, a lot of the teaching points and the important takeaways all seem to be the same from one training to another. So some of it becomes redundant. However, in terms of liability, it's good for us to have some exposure to different options and alternatives with training, so we can show, in case we're ever faced with any litigation, that we are adequately exposed to those areas of the latest updates and different information from different sources. So we're back on track for that. This is kind of great timing, Rob, when you sent me that question, because I reached out right away to Carol, and it just so happens that we're good to go right here in the month of November for it. So it's just very good. I was glad you prompted me with that, because timing is everything, and I think we just got fortunate and lucky. So we'll reschedule that up. The other thing, Rob, I'd like to mention real quick is the one thing that you covered during your inquiry the other day was about the coverage hours provided from Lower Merion. Right now for October, we're at about 205 hours of coverage. That will get mitigated downward into November, into December, and into the spring, because the challenges that we had from March of this year was basically from injured officers. That's why we saw a dramatic increase starting in April of 2020 with 184 hours of coverage hours provided by Lower Merion, all the way up to 265 hours in July and August that we saw, because we lost one officer to an injury back in March, and then another officer to an injury at the end of March, and then an officer was deployed with the Army National Guard in the first 2 weeks of June. So our scheduling vacancies were rampant at that time. The good news is now that those things have been mitigated. Two of the officers have now returned to full active duty without restrictions. So we will start to see those coverage hours going down. In addition to that, one of the officers, another officer, was recently injured on October the 8th, but we're expecting that officer to return to duty by November the 12th next week. So by the end of next week, Rob, and for the rest of the committee, I'm pleased to announce that we will be up to full speed again and injury-free. I'll say that with bated breath, by the end of next week. So we're going to see a drastic drop in those hours as we move, not only for the remainder of the year, but as we move towards the spring and into the summer, barring no exigent circumstances or complications with injuries. We will certainly see a return to what we had before. Now, to give everybody a snapshot view of what the normal average is, each month the Lower Merion coverage will average about 50 to 100 hours. That's about where we're at each month, for 50 to 100 hours, and that's where we hope to stay. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down, but that's usually kind of a sweet spot for us.
John, that's really good to hear that you're getting back, to 100%, with the department. I think you do this already, but could you be sure, John, to include the shift coverage hours in the monthly report?
Well, Rob, just to let you know, we do that on the monthly report that's given at the business council meeting each month, the third Wednesday of each month. It's on there. It's got its own separate line item in there. And not only does it do a comparison with the current month versus the previous month, it will do a comparison year to date as well. But what I will start to include, and I've included on tonight's status of command report that I've shared with everybody, is the total hours from the previous month, because that's the latest snapshot view that I can give everybody an understanding. So it'll be actually documented now 2 times, one on the status of command report for our meeting as a committee, as a group, as a team, and then it'll continue as a separate line item on the monthly ComStat report that is disseminated to everybody via email, and the mayor submits as the monthly report respectively at the meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you, John. I appreciate that. Okay, so Sean, is there anything else that you would like to share at this point? I think we've covered most things. Matt, go ahead.
Hi, thanks, Rob. I just wanted to give a quick update on the electric vehicle charging stations, since I know it cross-pollinates this committee and infrastructure committee. I got notification today from the manufacturer that the units are set to ship on November 11th. So we're underway. So once they get into the borough's hands, we'll then have to hire an electrician to hook it up, and that shouldn't take entirely too long. Just wanted to give you an update that they're on their way.
Great. That's really exciting. So they could be installed by Christmas. Yeah. Okay, great. All right. Well, at this point, I think we could move to public comment. Sean, should I? I think I'm the host, so I guess I could. I see Lisa McCann. I could admit Lisa.
Yeah, just tap on the participant pane and you can admit whomever's there.
Okay, here's Lisa, I think. Hi, Lisa, can you hear us?
Yes.
Welcome. This is our
Hi.
public comment portion. So my understanding is that you've had some back and forth with Bob about different ideas for the dog ordinance.
Not so much ideas. He just said, you know, what's my preference? My preference is noise, but I don't think I can handle that. So I told him I would pull some ideas together, you know, in the next week or 10 days and shoot it off to you folks. Basically, pulling from the things I've already sent you, but sorting it into some kind of order.
Okay, yeah, for what you would see as a solution.
Well, for dog noise.
Okay, yeah, that would be very helpful.
Okay.
Bob, did you want to speak to that? Bob, you're muted.
Lisa, I think that's terrific that that you'll be able to do that for us, because you have the most real experience of this particular problem, and I think I'd like to see us take that outline and just pass it to our solicitor and see if there's a sort of a simple precedented way of incorporating that guidance into our existing ordinance. As I looked at the various ideas from the different municipalities and how they address the issue, I don't have the same concerns about dog noise that you have, so I didn't know how to evaluate them according to the kind of specific problem you were having. So I'd like to address your specific problem because it's real and not like my imaginary idea of what the problem is. So I really appreciate your help with this.
Well, thanks. I can play my recordings of the dog barking through the party wall if anyone would like to hear them, and there's more than one. So,
but I do think you'll know what kind of rule will help. I think you'll know.
If you want to get a feeling for it, Bob, I can share that with you.
Great, thanks. I have a dog. I have my own dog.
Well, it might not bark for long. Anyway, well, and Bob, based on something you had said a while ago, I'm limiting any of the examples to Montgomery County.
Okay.
Thank
So
you.
just in terms of a timeline, Lisa, we'll meet again the first week in December, but if you're able to send it to us sooner, I could ask for input. I could circulate it with the committee.
Right. That was the thought. That,
Yeah.
A week or 10 days would give you another 2 weeks before your next meeting.
Yeah, that would be a good timeline. Okay, thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
Just a question and a comment. How would the level of noise be regulated if Lisa can? I don't know how other boroughs do that. How they, if you're using that idea. Also, some of the ordinances seemed a little restrictive to me. But I do like the ones that limit it within certain hours, but just throwing it out there for my ideas. I know we're just still in the forming process.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the noise ordinance that we currently have in place is, I think it's pretty good. John Walco revised that portion of the code pretty recently. And I think, I can't remember exactly, it might have been 2017, 2018. And I don't think since that code's been enforced, we've had really any complaints about, I mean, if there have been complaints about construction noise, maybe I should be asking actually, is Sean and Matt, is the noise ordinance that we have around construction activity and other noises, does it seem to be a good enough tool for you to enforce the current, the issues that arise?
Insofar as it specifies the time of days and weeks, I think that's a good thing to have in there because it says it has a good, and the exceptions also are helpful. So those two pieces of that ordinance, and I know we're talking about something different. This moment, Mona, I just realized that I think what you're talking about is like metering, isn't it? Like in the same way that you can meter light for light pollution, was your thought that maybe there's a certain threshold of noise that you could meter and say, well, this exceeds that level of noise? And I know there's like a thing in my neighborhood that makes noise intermittently now and then. And it doesn't really matter what time of day it happens. It's always annoying to me. But, the great philosopher Paul Simon said, one person's ceiling is another person's floor. And so, it might not bother my neighbors. So I think so there does have to be some kind of objective standard. And I think that's what sounds like that's what you were pointing to, Mona.
The Montgomery Township standard, the first one I sent to you folks, had that kind of description of how much repetition within a certain amount of time, how many barks within a certain amount of time. So I'll go through that and even give a couple of options if there are any to be had on that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's very helpful. I appreciate it, Lisa. That'll kind of, give us something concrete really to work with. So I really appreciate that. Okay, well, I think we've reached the end of our meeting, and I know we have another meeting in about 8 minutes. So this would give us a screen break or a dinner break if we stop here. So I suggest we adjourn, and I'll see you all again very soon.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all.
For coming, Lisa.
Thanks, Bob.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, John. Bye, Jim.